3 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. See, we've got Ty and Troy, Dale, Alejo, and myself, so we should have a quorum. Are there any announcements?
I don't have any.
Okay. Public comment. I'm assuming everybody got Penny's email with the several emails that came through for public comment last week.
I sent out an email on Friday, then I sent one out again late this morning or mid-morning, and then I received one since then.
Okay.
Hey, Eddie.
Yes.
Real quick, did anybody else see Richard's proposal? Got one of those emails referenced? I take that as no one saw it either.
Yeah, I didn't. I know that Richard made comments at the joint meeting we had. That may have been what they're referencing. Although I know Richard, actually at the GAC meeting, Richard had some prefacing comments that might have been also what they're referencing, but.
Okay, so no one else saw a document that he proposed.
No, I don't think it was a document, but I'm not sure. He may have shared it with some others, but not us.
Okay. Penny, are we okay with just attaching the email to the meeting minutes, or the emails, I should say?
Beth, is that acceptable?
I did some checking on this, and it is not legally necessary to read them all into the record. The main reason I recommended it the last time was that you hadn't seen them. This time, you've been able to see them, and I hope everyone's been able to read at least the bulk of them. And so it's not a legal requirement, no.
Okay.
Did each of the emails get a response acknowledging that it had been received?
Yes.
That's good.
Or I attempted to respond to everyone. If I missed anybody, it was pure accident.
Thank you, Penny.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's talk about the GAC opposition to the RFP process. I believe I've updated most of you, if not all of you, on what transpired last Thursday or 2 Thursdays ago. There was a motion made to halt the RFP process and let Tori in here, and immediately hire a new golf director. That motion was passed 4-2. The 2 nays were myself and Michael Ward. The reason why I voted nay is because we set out a plan about a month ago to move forward with the RFP process to see what's out there. I still think that's the best plan of action. However, I'm sure Dale will give his side. So I want everybody to be engaged in this discussion and know what's going on. So with that, I'll turn it over to Troy if you've got anything else to add to that.
No, I've already shared this with the city manager and some of the council members, and so once a vote's made today, we'll put it in writing and take it up to flagpole, and then I'll get my direction from that.
Okay. So Dale, can you tell us a little bit about the opposition here?
Sure. That vote was supported by 4 members, and I would say they're all well informed of the issue. This isn't something that just came casually to them. It's been discussed in great detail. They are also for public golfers with a strong identity with our public golf system, understanding the challenges the system faces, that it's faced in the past, and that it currently faces. There was a sentiment, it was expressed most strongly by Greg Ferris, who's no longer on the committee, but has worked with us, that the courses are at risk right now, and an RFP process is going to put them at greater risk because it delays critical decisions about maintenance and finance that we need to addressed better with a internal hire that's given the power and the opportunity to fix it. So it is what it is for this. The GAC is clearly on record as saying that's the best path based on their intimate knowledge of the public golf system and their deep desire that it be maintained as a quality, affordable, and sustainable public golf system. So that's kind of where they are. I got some other thoughts about as you go forward, but that on the table, that's what, if there's any questions about what the intent was, I'd be happy to try to field those.
Yeah, I got a question. Sorry, Eddie.
Go ahead, Aleo.
And maybe I'm not seeing it, but what was that? And what was that motion? Do you guys have that motion, or do we have access? Do we have access to that motion just so that, or was it just to block the RFP process? Just so that I understand.
No, there's a specific motion that was recorded and should have been submitted to the park board.
And maybe I'm not seeing it, but that's my fault. I can go back and look for it. And then my other question is, this is for Troy Houtman. In the absence of not having a manager of golf, you know, when there's decisions that have to be made about finance and maintenance for the courses and stuff like that, does that fall on your shoulders, or what does that decision-making process looks like? I guess who is taking up those responsibilities in the meantime?
Alejo, that would be me. I'm working with staff. A good example is today I got some information about our irrigation system over at MAC. We have some serious pump issues that's going to cost us somewhere around about $30,000 to make a repair. And so I'm working with the city manager and the finance department to do an emergency purchase order to make that repair. So those things are getting taken care of. There have been some things that have moved forward from the Golf Advisory Committee, like the idea of raising the fees for golf carts or changing some of the past prices, which I support. They came up with some really good suggestions and recommendations. I've moved those forward, but the big question is, what and how should we react to some of these things related to request for proposal that's out there?
Sure.
So in regards to maintenance and operations, we're operating. We still got to operate these golf courses correctly. And in fact, we probably even need to take care of a lot of these bigger issues, because if, and I'm not saying what is the right way or what's the wrong way, whether we get a request for proposal, whoever is interested in that wants to see these golf courses in good repair. So it's in our best interest for all of us to make sure that we are continuing to have these golf courses maintained well and operating well.
So I guess my question, you know, so the courses aren't being we're not neglecting the courses, right? You're responsible in making sure that those decisions are being made when they need to be made.
Can we make improvements? Yes. Is there ways that we can do some things better? Yes. But I don't think anybody's walked away from doing their jobs, if that's your concern.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure that we understand.
If I might clarify a little on that, there are some serious concerns about current maintenance and delayed decisions. And if you need to see those, I welcome you to come to the public courses, and I'll show you and talk to the people who are seeing those. This is a simple example. Auburn Hills is our marquee course, and I play there every weekend, Saturday and Sundays at 10 o'clock. The sand traps aren't raked. The mowing is delayed. Sim Park doesn't have a rough mower right now. They're wedging things in. All those things are contributing to a lower quality than we've seen in the past. And that's our fear, is that can't be rectified unless we have an aggressive and professional perspective to take us forward.
And I guess
in regards to some of those items, we started working on equipment replacement. We're already working on that. We're also hiring staff, and that was probably one of the main reasons why some of these things aren't getting done in regards to the smaller things of raking the sand traps, which is extremely important. But we have just recently been given the green light to start hiring staff. That was not my decision to not hire staff. That was from above with other concerns about budget. So now that we got the green light, it takes a while to get some of those folks on board. And once we get them on board, I'm hoping that we'll see some improvements.
Are the bunkers not being raked because we are still following the COVID protocol, with the rakes
No, Eddie, it's the staff raking. It's not individuals. It's the staff member who's out there at 5 a.m. As you play the country club, you're not. I bet your traps are raked and pristine every weekend, as they should be, and that's what usually is the case at the public courses. But they don't have this. It's not the fault of the people who are there. They are doing a miraculous job to keep the courses open. And I understand the hiring freeze. That makes no sense. This is an enterprise fund that has the money to operate as a business, and it's being hamstrung by budget decisions that are predicated on the city's overall budget problems. That doesn't make any sense. And I don't envy Troy having to balance this. It's difficult, but that's why the position of the GAC was, let's establish a professional operating environment where you have essentially a CEO who has the resume and the credibility to take us forward. You can't expect that out of Troy Hauptman. That's unfair to do that. I pity the man for being where he is, but if we're going to go one way or the other, if you end up going to an RFP, it's going to take 6 months, and we're delaying a lot of critical decisions that I understand the reluctance to move forward, but that's the sentiment of the GAC, that this is a time to make the right decision. A critical part of this is the financing, and I'd asked the last meeting about what our end of year projected balance is, and it's essentially the board of directors of this business. That's essential to know. I'm looking at it that there may be $1 million in the black end of year. Emma said we are still carrying the $550,000 carryover from last year that was in the black. We've added $140,000 the first quarter. We have the component of the salaries that are not being filled, the director, the pro at Sim Park, the assistant to greenskeeper at Tex. That's at least $250,000. If that's not spent, that goes to the ending balance. So we would have an end of the year, perhaps as much as $1 million in the black, which is a great position to be in. Now, that question is, do you want to hand that off to somebody private when we are in a position just to bring in a really quality golf administrator and maintain our local control?
So
that is a potential projection, but we don't know. There's a lot of expenses we have to take care of. We want to make the repair to the ponds over at McDonald. That's $200,000, maybe $250,000. We want to make the repair to the roof over at Tex. That's $50,000 to $60,000. So we're already working on we got the bids, we got information. We're working on trying to get those contracts moving those dollars from into the budget so we can actually spend those dollars. So there's a lot of funding that we need to still make sure that we have at the end of the year.
Troy, would you not be more comfortable having a golf administrator with the proper resume, hired with the expectations of being effective in marketing and maintenance, and take that off your plate and let that be driven by somebody who's doing that for a living, essentially? Wouldn't that be better for you?
If we're not doing an RFP, yes. But if we are going to do the RFP, then I think that's it would be really hard to find somebody to do that for 4 or 5 months, maybe 6 months. No,
I totally agree. If it's going to be done, the RFP has to be put to sleep and the position advertised as a ongoing that's the city's operating model and go forward.
As I had mentioned before, a lot of decisions were predicated on whether we were going to do the RFP or not. So when we're working with the First Tee Kemper options, there was a lot of things that we were wanting to make decisions on. One of them was increasing the fees for the golf carts. Another one was increasing the fees for some of the passes, or at least changing some of those passes. Another one was making decisions on equipment. But some of those things we just need to go ahead and do anyways. And so those things I was not allowed to move forward with. Now I am. So I want to start moving forward with those things, whether we have a request for proposal that's passed or not. If we do not move forward with a request for proposal, that's how I'll get that direction from the city manager and council with your guys' recommendation one way or the other. If we don't, then I will continue to keep working and taking care of our golf courses. If we do look at not doing the RFP, then I definitely want to get somebody on board. We'll do the hiring process like we normally do.
How long does that process take? I mean, we're here middle May. Peak season is summertime, of course. So even if we were to go down that route, a competitive hiring process, there's no way you could have someone in there within 60 days. I know how this stuff works. Probably best case scenario is the fall, September, October, something like that. Is that correct in terms of the hiring process and expected time frame?
Yeah, I think usually we want to put the specifications together for that position, get the position approved, and that would probably take 2-3 weeks. Then we want to go out to advertise it. We want to do a national search. We want to find the very best person, no matter where they come from. And so we want to do a national search to find that right person.
Troy, I think his question was about the RFP process, not the hiring.
No, that's incorrect, Dale. My question was about the hiring process.
I'm sorry. All right, I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
Okay, so I'm on the right track?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So then we're looking at recruiting across the country, and that's going to take probably 4 weeks, a couple weeks to review the applications, get them in, do the interview process. Nowadays, now that we're doing more Zoom meetings, that could definitely cut some of that time frame. And then for them to give their notice to their employers, we're looking best scenario 3 months. There's ways that we can trim off of that as well. So maybe 2.5 months, best scenario.
So I do have a comment and a question of Dale. I was looking at my meetings, or my notes from the meeting on April 1st when we were discussing the Kemper proposal, and they were proposing $75,000 fee per course. I think the general discussion was, how do we know if that's the best deal we can get? And there was a consensus among us that we don't know until we test the market. And in those notes, I wrote down that, Dale, you said that there were at least 2 other entities besides Kemper interested in this opportunity. So, so I think with that, I don't know whether that's accurate or not, but we can assume going in that we're going to have more than 1 responses, I think, to the RFP. So we can, in fact, test that $75,000 fee. And because of that, I don't think we have tested the market. We haven't tested the market. And because of that, I support moving forward. So we at least have the knowledge of what an RFP can bring us. Right now, we're just talking about it. We don't know if that $75,000 per course is good. So I just feel like, Dale, I feel like we follow you down these rabbit holes about what the best approach is to the golf course, which you're so critical of. And here we are now. You've turned to the right when we were already going down a path, which was in fact to pursue the RFP. All of the responses, 90% of the responses that we received, it was basically a form email saying the same thing. I assume those are your soldiers in the community who support your position, and they have all along. So I don't, I read all those comments and I welcome those comments, but I'm not sure at the end of the day, they sway me one way or the other. I'm still on we need to do an RFP position, and I don't see that changing.
Well, I think it's a serious discredit to those individuals to suggest they are knee-jerk, bootlick sycophants or just taking their orders and moving forward. Those are free-thinking individuals, and there were most of those emails included original thoughts from folks who had, from experience or otherwise. So I'd take offense at that. If that's the kind of response you give to the core group that you're serving, that's a really unfortunate position to take. The reason that I understand the argument for an RFP, but understand one thing. Going to an RFP means that the manager has thrown up his hands and said, I am incapable of installing an operational model that includes an internal manager, and I can't manage it.
I don't agree with that assessment.
Well, it's the fact, Ty. It is the fact. He is saying, I can't do this internally.
And see what kind of responses we get is not throwing our hands up and abandoning the cause. we could choose to continue with internal staff doing this. We don't know until we test the market and get responses from other companies.
And Dale, just not that long ago, you were saying, before you came on this board, you were saying, as a golf advisory committee, not even a member of that committee, that the city has no business running a golf course. We suck at running a golf course. So now we're looking at doing an RFP, getting somebody besides the city to run the golf course, and that pushback is coming. So I'm kind of with Ty. I'm kind of confused what side of the fence you're on. If today you want professional golf services, but you think the city can run it now, when just not that many months ago you didn't think that they could. So I guess I'm confused as well.
No, Mr. Palmer, that is totally inaccurate. My comments are all on record. You can go back to the testimony I made before the council in 2019. I made the case that the golf division is the bastard child of the park department because you're not managing it. It wasn't that you can't manage it, it's that you're not managing it. Never once ever suggested that the appropriate response is to outsource it and privatize it. That has never been the case.
I didn't say that that's what you said. I just
no,
said,
exactly what you said.
That the city couldn't run, that we shouldn't run. We're not in the business to run a golf course. We can't run a golf course. I didn't say that you said to go get outside management. I'm just telling you that then, not very many months ago, you said that you did not believe that we could manage or run these courses. So now we're looking at an RFP to find a professional that can.
And that's saying that we can't do it internally. There are other golf systems. I've pointed them out numerous times. There's been a refusal to go look at them. Lincoln, Aurora, Colorado, who do this well. It's not impossible to run a public golf system with internal management and keep the resources internally. One of the factors you need to look at is the city is willing to walk away from a huge amount of money, transferring it to the private management and First Tee, and won't do that. We're just making the case if you did that for yourself with a competent manager, we'll be in fine shape. I mean, I'm not trying to just be argumentative for the sake of being argumentative. We care about the golf courses and just want the best outcome. Mr. Ferris over and over has said the delay here, if you go to the RFP, Ty, that will be 6 months. And if you reject it at that point and then you go to hire somebody, then you're talking another 3 months on top of that. So we're talking perhaps a year for the opportunity to install somebody who could fix it. We're just saying, that's what the committee is saying. It'd be better to do it now. And that, it is what it is. If the park board's not on board with that, that will be the position they'll take, but it does fly in the face of public golfers who see this fairly clearly.
Philip?
So I try not to make any decision outside of a vacuum, right? So I spend a lot of time. There are multiple articles for the last decade that says municipal governments can, what's the best way to put this? There just isn't the numbers to support continuing with large golf systems, right? And this has been the continual thing for everybody. And most municipalities have sold them or closed them, right? So how do we move forward? What is the best way to manage what we have now for the long term to give everybody the opportunity to golf, but not get to the point where we no longer have money to do it any longer, right? Where most of these cities have gotten to, which is the money's not there anymore. So I think this is a bigger discussion than just inside management or outside management. It's about what is the long-term best way to manage these courses to continue to have them, because there's a demographics issue. That's what a lot of these articles say, is that if you look at the demographics, long-term, there isn't enough people to continue with all of them. So this is, to me, is a bigger discussion. So this is why we discuss how it puts all that on them, on the onus of another company to manage them, because they now have to manage the resources. It gives the Park and Rec Department more opportunities to do other things well, why they do these things well. So that's just my thoughts.
End of the day, I'm not going to pose an RFP if that's what is decided. We go down that path. But I want to ask those folks right now who think this is the right idea, what is your position on the financial picture that's placed before the RFP respondents with regard to the money that's currently directed to the general fund versus the first tee proposal. Are you familiar with that and you're ready to make a decision? Do you have that information in hand?
I think it's important for us, in my opinion, to see what's out there.
That wasn't the question, Eddie. What is your position on what will the RFP specify as to the resources that'll be available to the respondent?
Troy, have you been working on the RFP? I think we talked a couple weeks ago. You mentioned that you're fairly close to finalizing it.
Yeah, there's a lot of different components to that, and I'm not exactly sure what Mr. Goder's question is, but the idea, I think, is that the third-party operator will step in and take over day-to-day operations of the golf courses, work with our equipment, work with us in regards to replacement of equipment. They might have opportunities to buy a lot of this equipment on discount. They want to focus on the marketing. They want to focus on the food and beverage. Those are the things that we really want to see in the RFP. So those are the major big points of handing it over, but they would have a lot of opportunity to manage the day-to-day activities of improvements of the golf courses. That would be something we really want them to do. However, long term, we definitely need to put some investment back into the golf courses. We all know that, and this might be an opportunity to do that. Another thing with that is also we always talk a lot about the overhead items that the golf division pays for. Mr. Goder had made a comment that golf is the bastard of the Parks and Recreation Department, which I think is the exact opposite. We have bent over backwards to support golf through this division and this department. I'm not getting the resources that I need from a higher level. So I really disagree with that comment. Right now, we're absorbing a lot of the costs for golf so we can save money and make improvements to the golf courses. So, but getting back to the RFP, I think there's a lot of different ways to look at it. There's pros and cons both ways. And I have both legs on both sides. I have one leg on each side of barbed wire, and I'm sitting there looking at that, trying to find out what's the best way to deal with this from staff perspective. But there's definitely a lot of factors both ways.
Well, if I could point just two elements that, in regard to what the question I asked, there's a $240,000 central administrative fee. The golf division takes golf revenue, gives to the general fund. It's not a line item amount. It's just there to subsidize the salaries of people who are in City Hall. The second element is the $82,000 public safety fee that goes to support the budgets of the police and fire department. The question is, will the respondent to an RFP be expected to make that same payment to the city, or is the city going to forego those two payments for the RFP?
As I mentioned, I think the overhead goes away.
So the city's going to walk away from $250,000 in revenue. It currently takes from the golf system. And that's a positive for me. If you're going to go to the RFP, then the one good thing that happens is that inappropriate draining of golf revenues to the general fund for those two items would cease to exist, and those funds would then be available to the golf division. Is that correct?
So if you remember what Mr. Manning had talked about in regards to the enterprise fund, it was required for a lot of those overheads to be paid back to the city. And
now the golf system no longer would make an $82,000 payment to the police and fire department.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, I want just folks to understand that. Ty and Mr. Palmer, do you understand that that's what I'm asking? Is that going to be written into the RFP proposal so that the person who bids on it understands they have access to that $250,000 in administrative fees? They have access to that $82,000 that's currently going to police and fire, and then that fits into the golf budget, and they'll make their bid accordingly. Now, the net result may be those funds then are available to the golf division. That's great. But we don't understand why the manager would do that for an RFP and won't do it for himself. He won't do it for Troy. Let Troy have that $250,000 to run the golf system. He's willing to do that for the RFP respondent, but not for Troy Hauptman. That's the issue we're putting on the table.
That's because it's an enterprise fund. There's two different animals here. And so, but it won't be written into the RFP saying that they have access to these funds. There won't be any mention of any requirement for them to make payments on these overheads, because they're going to be doing it. They're going to have their own IT. They're going to have their own payroll system. They're going to have their own finance and marketing, so they don't have to pay into it.
Police and fire, they're going to have their own police and fire?
It won't be an enterprise. Enterprise requires to pay into those. It won't be an enterprise fund.
No, it's still an enterprise fund. That doesn't change with the RFP. It's still an enterprise fund. What is it if it's not an enterprise fund? And that's I don't want to nitpick that, but that's the big issue, you know, those dollars. And again, I think the folks said, I could explain this to golfers and say, if the end result you're saying you can't manage it, fine, throw up your hands, walk away from it, go to an RFP, but make sure the RFP, in that RFP, the understanding is we get to claim that $300,000, $400,000 that's going to stay in the golf division. It's going to be there to pay for those improvements at MAC, all those ongoing expenses you have, which is a good thing. But understand, if you're making that decision, that's what you're making the decision based on those numbers.
That's kind of the idea of why we want to do this RFP, find out what the market is, if we can end up in the end with making money to put back into the golf division.
Okay, and I would lean towards supporting that. If you guarantee you're not going to come back and drain that golf division as you've been doing the last 10 years at least of those funds, and you're going to let those stay in the golf division, that's great. But understand, this is a clear-cut financial issue. This isn't something I'm making up. This is black and white. And if that's what we're doing, that's good.
But if I could just follow up on that, and maybe you can help a little with this choice. So those kind of expenses plus the $75,000 per 4 courses for $300,000, those fees would be paid, and then there would be a break from there at which revenues would be shared, profit would be shared, however the wording occurs, but the city would accrue some of the profit that would come from the operations of this system, correct?
So it's really going to be interesting how this is negotiated and proposed as well. So I think we're like two or three steps ahead. We're not going to know what they want until we have an RFP out there and they respond to it. And then we're not going to know until there's actually a negotiation. Any kind of business is going to want to come out in the black. So they want to guarantee that they're going to be able to do that. And by us providing the best courses we possibly can for them to operate, that would be something that they really want to see. Now, however much is left over, I think that's the idea of what we want to see. That money goes back to the golf courses. Obviously, they're going to have to pay their overhead as well, and they're going to have expenses as well. What those are exactly, I don't know their business day to day. That's why we want to get an RFP to find out.
But Ty, when you mentioned the city would claim that money, you need to distinguish that as opposed to the golf division. If it's just profit going to the city, that's what I'm concerned about. And you make a good point that money's there to be decided. Somebody has to be in control of it, but that in the RFP is what we're going to be looking for, a very precise description of where that money goes.
And I think that's what we want to make sure that our council and city manager understand that. And that's my discussions with the city manager, is that those proceeds would go back into the golf courses. That's the whole idea of even making this, even going through this whole effort, was we wanted to find ways to put money back into the golf courses.
So a question about the contract itself, like in Sand Creek, Kemper gets paid, I think it's up to $82,000 or $85,000 a year now. Just that's their fee. All revenue that comes in goes back to the city. As Ty mentioned, there might be more profits, and there is an opportunity to write incentives into an RFP. If they do better, they might get more money, but it's a flat fee, and that's all of their expenses are covered by that fee. All their IT, all their internal charges are included in that. In the Kemper case, $75,000. We have reason to believe that's more likely to be in the neighborhood of $50,000 in a competitive environment. And now I know there are at least 3 others that might be interested in looking at it.
Well, I think it's fair to say that, everybody wants the end product to be good. We want to put the best product in front of our citizens at each of our golf courses. It's just a matter of how we get there. So we gave Troy and the rest of the staff, some direction of about a month ago, April 1st. And I believe we need to stay consistent with that so that we're not jumping all over the place and moving the goalpost. So, if there's any more discussion, I'd be happy to make a motion to continue with the RFP process.
I would just like to ask that we get a definitive number from finance. Emma wasn't comfortable doing that. We've got a budget. It identifies what our revenues are for 2021. It's 3.2 million. If that's what we're working from and we're above that, as board of directors of this corporation, you should want to know what your profit end is, what you're giving away. You're essentially putting up for bid something that might have $1 million, even under this questionable operating system we're doing now. It may well be $1 million in the black, and you're going to walk away from that. So you should have that in your mind. If you're doing that consciously, that's fine. But that's essential information that the board of directors should have.
So
just to give a little bit of comment on that, as we were finalizing the specifications for the RFP, we put the RFP out, able to get responses, whether it's 2 or 3 months down the road. At that point in time, we'll have a much better idea of what the projections are, and we can actually compare our operations with some of those that are bidding. That's one of the great things about this. We don't have to accept the bids, but at that point in time, we can actually make some really good financial decisions at that point in time without having to make a commitment to anybody in regards to finalizing a contract. Also with that, we'll also have a better understanding of all of our expenses and some of our emergencies that are popping up. Like I mentioned, we have $200,000 that we need to make a repair on the ponds. We have $60,000 of roof repairs that we need to make. I think I mentioned earlier, we have about $35,000 of a repair over at MAC for the irrigation system. So those are all going to eat in to our balance in this fund. And so 2 or 3 months, we'll have bids in hand. We can be able to compare that with where we're at that point in time financially and work with Mr. Manning on making some good evaluations.
But we do have the money to make those investments now, right? We do have enough money to pay for the items we can write a check right today, and it's not going to put the golf division in any financial peril. We're actually in really good shape, right?
That's what I actually had a conversation with the city manager this morning, and we're making that commitment to try and make that move forward. Those repairs will probably be being done in the fall. I don't necessarily want to rip up the course in the middle of the summer. I don't want to rip up a roof over at Tex in the middle of the summer. So what I want to do is I want to start putting those underneath contract and going through our purchasing process and moving those dollars into the right funds so we can expend those funds. And it's going to take a few months to make that happen.
Alejo?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Eddie. So Troy, just a question for you. I mean, regardless of whether, like, if we decide to move forward with an RFP, or if we decide to put a pause on the RFP and try to hire a golf manager, basically, as a city staff, we're committed to executing, to moving forward this summer through our busy season with you and the existing staff as is, because whether it's a 6-month process or a 3-month process, because I mean, to be honest, we're not going to get a manager in place, I don't believe. I mean, even if we put this job description out now until middle to late July, basically we're committing to operating the golf courses. Just so that I understand, is that correct, Troy? Like, we're operating these courses as a city through the summertime.
Yes, working with staff to make that happen. We're meeting on a regular basis. We're prioritizing different emergency situations that are occurring. We're negotiating, looking at marketing, all those things, working with staff. And so a lot of things have been pushed down to the golf pros and the superintendents to be able to make some of their decisions on their own. But in the meantime, it's going to save us some money.
Sure.
To put that back into the golf courses. If the decision today is not to do the RFP and hire somebody, I'll start that process right now.
Sure.
So it just, those are my options. That's what I'm doing.
And then just so that we're understanding as well, we can go through this RFP process and find out that we don't like any of the deals that are presented to us. So we're not throwing our hands in the air saying we can't operate this system. Correct?
You're right. We have argued in the past that we can manage this, and I think at that point in time when we get the RFPs, it'll be a great opportunity to compare and look at what we're doing compared to what is being offered, and then we can really value what is the best operation, what's going to get us the best outcome in the future.
And are you confident, Troy, that as city staff, like we'll be able to put out a good product this summer for our golfers? I mean, I trust that you guys will be able, that as staff will be able to do that, but I just wanted to put that out there.
With the resources that we have,
yeah,
the staff is doing everything they possibly can to make things go well. We've been hamstrung. A lot of the work that we typically do in the wintertime, we're catching up on. There's obviously some deficiencies throughout the courses. Over at McDonald, the fairways are a little bit brown because we have Bermuda grass, and part of it also is the weather. We've had very, very cool weather, so the Bermuda has not really gotten green yet. But there's ways that we can actually address those, and that's overseeding with some different type of seed. We have not been able to do that, and so we're trying to catch up on a lot of things now.
And that was due to the hiring freeze that the city had in place.
Correct.
And I would say I would totally support Mr. Hauptman going forward. If he's dealt that hand, he has to play it. He's going to have our support, but we can't operate the way we have the past 6 months. I think Troy would acknowledge lacking staff, lacking the financial backing of the finance department, and the manager has hamstrung him. If we're going to go forward, what those folks you got the emails from are going to be looking for are those improvements that take place on the golf courses. There's more than just Bermuda winter kill at stake here. MAC is a disaster. It has been unattended, hasn't had a good plan going forward. But if you address that going forward, you have our support, Troy. I hope you do it. But they're going to be watching that. They're going to want to see the sand traps raked. They want to see a full crew that you're empowered to hire. They want to see a rough mower at Sim Park. They're going to want to see those essential elements that make it possible for us to have a good course. That hasn't happened in the past, Aleo. That has not been the case in the past, but it can be going forward. And Troy, you have our total support going forward to do that. We're not trying to fight you here. We want to make it work, but there have been illogical decisions made here. But again, just I hope that it does go forward, as you say.
So Eddie, you made a motion. I'll second that.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Will we see that RFP before it goes out, Troy?
Yeah, I think I've shared that a couple times that
Yeah.
it's going to go to the Golf Advisory Committee first, and then we'll take it to the Park Board. I think I've shared that, told you guys that at least 2 or 3 times.
Yep.
So
Thank
the
you.
timing for that would be probably next month to go to the GAC and back to the Park Board and then release it kind of end of June.
I'm hoping so. We're getting really close to finalizing all the items on the proposal. We want to make sure that our law department gets a chance to look at it, our finance department gets to look at it, and it's easier for us to make those adjustments now than it is to come back later on and make those changes. So once I have a product that I think is really strong and is in the best interest of all of our stakeholders, we'll bring that to the Park Board and to the Golf Advisory Committee, and they can also take a look at it and give us feedback, and we can make some changes at that point as well.
Troy, during this process, if we approve going forward with the RFP, is there an opportunity to bring in an interim golf manager, if one existed?
That is a possibility. It's something we talked about. Look at the pros and cons. Is it going to save us some money? Who are we going to bring in? Who's going to be interested in working on a temporary basis? What can I pay them? Where are they going to come from? Are they going to give up a job to come take a temporary job? There's a lot of different things to look at. At this point in time, I am working with our staff, and we're trying to make the best that we got. And I have a lot of confidence in our staff. I mean, it's been 2.5 months since Mr. Hendricks has left, and we've already made some improvements already operational wise for the whole division.
And please don't take that as I was saying that you weren't doing a good job. That wasn't my point. But I know that there's an individual out there currently that is retired that might be a great, comes actually from the Golf Advisory Committee and may be a great interim person to take that job short term. Again, not saying you're doing a bad job, but that maybe would help you relieve some of your pressure. And
Sure.
Just curious if that was a possibility while this process took place.
Yeah, it's a great possibility. And maybe as we get more information about what direction we're going to go, that can help us make some decisions in the near future.
Okay.
Definitely.
I'd like to echo a little support for what Mr. Palmer said. I understand he's talking about, we were paying somebody $100,000 a year to do a job. Now we're asking Troy to do that same job. That's got to compromise what he's doing for the rest of the park department. He can't do everything. So that is, I think, a reasonable suggestion, Mr. Palmer, and I hope that is taken seriously.
Okay, we'll go roll call here. We'll start with Philip.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. What was that?
So the motion was made by me and seconded by Troy Palmer to move forward with the RFP process.
Yes, I agree. Move forward the process.
Okay. Alejo?
I agree as well.
Dale?
On behalf of the GAC and the 70-some golfers who responded, I am voting no and hope that we would take a different path.
Tori? She's having some technical difficulties possibly. Troy?
Palmer?
Yep.
I agree.
Ty?
I vote yes.
I will vote yes.
Yes,
will
I
vote
agree.
yes as
Sorry about
well.
that, guys.
And Tori is a yes, so this motion passes 6-1. Okay. Let's move to the golf update. We've got a GAC member appointment on the docket here. I know Tori and Troy and Gentry have been working on a list of names. So if you've got an update there, Tori or Troy or whoever.
I don't. I've actually been slammed. God, technology. Sorry, guys. I have been slammed. I have my fundraiser on Friday, so I have not had a chance yet to reach out to the list of a couple people that I've been given.
Okay. When is our next GAC meeting? Is it in a couple weeks?
Yeah, I think the next one is on June 3rd. I take that back, June 10th. And then the next park board is June 14th. So I think this is a park board vote.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if we want to postpone this member appointment until the next park board meeting.
The next GAC meeting is June 3rd, the first Thursday, and the park board is going to be June 8th.
That was a week off.
June 7th. Oh, no, never mind, the 14th. I can't read my calendar.
It's the second, yeah.
Yeah, it's the second Monday, so it's,
It's as late as it can.
yeah. The first Thursday is June 3rd. The second Monday is June 14th.
Okay. Well, that should give Tori and the rest of the crew a little bit more time to reach out to potential appointments. And we will make that motion, is it the 14th? June 14th. So, okay. I don't have a.
Penny, my calendar still has the Tuesday meetings of the GAC. Are you going to pull those all back?
Are they on Thursday now?
Yeah, they're on Thursday. I may not have gotten all of them updated yet, Dale.
Okay.
I'll make sure that's done this week.
They've got to change the bylaw.
They voted on the bylaw change.
Okay. I don't have a president's update. Troy, do you have a director's update?
No, I'll just share this information with the city manager and council and continue moving forward with the specifications of the RFP. And once I get that done, share it with you all. So we'll definitely, hopefully get that done here in June. If it's not done by the beginning of June, we might have to have a special meeting to go over it if there's any questions or whatnot. Then try to get it out as soon as we can. The sooner the better.
Sure. Troy, did you have anything? Palmer? Saw you pop up here. Just wanted to show your face. That's good. Okay, well, if there's nothing else that needs to be discussed today, we can adjourn, and appreciate everybody accommodating me. Sorry again, got double booked there last week, but appreciate everybody's time today.
How'd you do?
Pretty good.
Thank you.
All right,
This
thanks,
meeting is
everybody.
adjourned.
Take care, everybody.
Okay,
Have
thank
a
you.
great day.
Bye.